Hey, how's it going everyone? This is the Anime Man. If you're an avid viewer of anime, a keen reader of manga, or an enthusiastic collector of hentai, or all of the above, you've most likely thought of this one scenario in your head.
When I grow up and get the money, I want to go to Japan to experience what my favorite anime characters are experiencing.
If you have thought something like this or something similar, then let me go ahead and paint the rest of the picture for you.
Alright, hold it right there. This is a stick up. Nani? You said you wanted to go to Japan, right? Hand it over. What do you want? You're my house keys? You want my phone? My wallet? What do you want from me? No. Not my wife. Yeah. She has to go. No! Anything but my waifu! Let me say it again. You said you wanted to go to Japan. Then hand it over. You won't be needing her. No! I want to explore Japan! The Nippons! With my waifu! I want to experience anime land with my waifu! Look, I'm doing this for your sake, okay? You just have to hand her over. I'm saying this for you, because if you don't, you're just gonna have a bad time. Naze? Why do you say that? Desu? Well, that's because,
as you can tell from the title of this video, Japan is not like anime. I'm sure a lot of you watching this already knew that fact, and for those of you who somehow didn't understand that fact, then sorry to burst your dream bubble, but I'm doing this for your sake. Because I don't want you coming to Japan, seeing everything that's here, and then going home disappointed because you didn't see or experience what you were expecting. And unfortunately, I've seen way too many people fall into this anime honey trap, thinking that the things they see in anime directly reflect how Japan is in real life. I don't know, maybe it's because we're such an escapist-centered community, but sometimes people forget that anime is nothing more than a fictitious caricature. To think that Japan is remotely like anime is saying that everything we see in Family Guy and Rick and Morty happens in the US in real life. And yes, some of the things that are explored in that show and some of the topics that they do cover in those kinds of shows are directly reflective on that culture. But no matter how you look at it, they're just fictitious exaggerations of reality. And while I can go on forever pinpointing every single aspect of anime that's not like Japan, saying shit like, nobody in Japan carries a katana on the train. Nobody in Japan holds toast in their mouth and runs to school. Nobody in Japan runs with their arms flailing behind them and practicing ninjutsu in class. I mean, I'm sure all of those points just go without saying. Unless you really thought Japan is like that, in which case I advise you to take a quick trip to dictionary.com and look up the word fiction before you go to bed. Instead, I'm gonna cover some major topics about the Japanese culture that a lot of anime fans and ultimately weeaboos kind of misconceive about Japan in real life. So if I haven't already shattered your dreams hard enough at this point, then let's begin. Japanese in anime is useless. Having been fluent in Japanese for pretty much my entire life and having seen more anime than a porn star has seen dicks, one thing I can say for certain is that most of the Japanese that you hear in anime is fucking useless. I'm sure you've all heard of some of these at some point. Shit like, Nani? Kisama. That kind of shit is pretty much useless to anyone who is actually trying to learn Japanese. Because prepare to get your mind blown. No one fucking talks like that. In fact, interestingly, a recent Japanese survey found that after interviewing 200 Japanese college students, they found that over 63% of them don't like it when people in real life speak like anime characters. Reasons ranging from it's creepy and it doesn't work in real life, to it's obnoxious and it gives me a fucking headache. And you know what, I have to agree, when you bring mannerisms and speech patterns directly from anime into the real world, I fucking hate it. That might be the fundamental reason why I hate going to maid cafes in Japan, because the maids try way too hard to act like anime characters and to replicate the speech patterns and mannerisms that you find in anime characters. And when you bring that into reality, it just fucking hurts to watch and listen to. I honestly think those kinds of far-off concepts like moe and deres should stay in anime and not be brought into the real world, because it just doesn't work in reality. If I met a tsundere like Aisaka Taiga in real life, I would fucking call her a bitch and swerve her harder than Sakamoto. If I met a yandere like Gasa Yuno in real life, I don't think I would, because she would be in jail immediately for being a fucking psychopath. And if I met a dere like Furukawa Nagisa in real life, then that actually wouldn't be too bad, honestly. I think I'd quite like that. But what I found most surprising about this survey was that the percentage of people who did say they liked it when people in real life spoke like anime characters is actually quite a high number still. Especially considering the fact that in Japan, not many people watch anime altogether. More on that later, but first, everyday life in Japan. Unfortunately, too many international viewers of slice of life anime assume that the things that are portrayed in these kinds of everyday life anime is a direct portrayal of Japan in real life. And yes, depending on the slice of life show, some of the things that are shown are actually pretty accurate to real life Japan. A great example is the anime Lucky Star, where in episode 12 the main characters go to Comic-Con, which is Japan's biggest anime convention. And the way the show portrays the craziness of the convention and the kind of subculture that runs within the convention is actually pretty accurate to real life. But that sort of example in anime is very rare. In fact, I would say the majority of slice of life anime that are shown are just exaggerations or parodies of circumstances and situations that might happen in Japan in real life. In fact, if you go outside of major cities, the majority of Japan is pretty normal. Even Tokyo, which is like the tourist center of Japan, has, depending on where you are in Tokyo, some pretty average, everyday, normal places. Which, if you only came to Japan to experience the anime culture, would seem really boring to you. But it's still fun if you're there to just experience Japan as a country and as just a whole culture, which unfortunately I find a lot of international anime fans who do come to Japan kind of just ignore and push away. Because I find that most times than not, they're only just interested in things that are anime related and expect all of Japan to be anime related, which brings me to my next point. Anime is not mainstream. I discussed earlier that I found it really surprising that there was still a high number of people who said that they didn't mind it when real life people, Japanese people, spoke like anime characters, especially considering the fact that not many Japanese people altogether do watch anime. And I meant what I said because this may be quite a bit of a surprise to some of you, but anime's just not that big in Japan. Whoa, hold the fuck up, you might be thinking to yourself, Joey, but Japan is the birthplace of anime. They air anime series on TV. They show anime movies in cinemas. They release so much manga and light novels that the international community wishes they could get their weeby hands on. One of the biggest misconceptions I found about the popularity of anime in Japan from the international community is that so many people think that it is common to watch anime in Japan. While yes, Japan does appreciate anime in the public space, such as building a giant Gundam statue in Odaiba, using anime characters in advertisements, and even going as far as to dedicate an entire city to anime. It is still just as uncommon for people in Japan to watch anime like the rest of the world. Because do you know what the biggest art medium and entertainment corporation is in Japan right now? Disney. There are more people in Japan right now that appreciate Disney more than anime, with Tokyo Disneyland being one of the biggest attractions in all of Japan. There is more Disney merchandise being sold and more tickets to Disney and Pixar films being sold in cinemas than anime could ever hope to sell. And on that day, the Japanese anime community received a grim reminder. Now yes, with the success of some major anime films like Kimi no Na wa and Koi no Katachi, that trend is slowly changing. But as of right now, in terms of commercial profit and popularity overall, Disney and Pixar is just way bigger than anime. I thought about it a while ago, but the reason why the international community might think that anime is everywhere in Japan might have to do with the fact that you are comparing it to your own culture and where you are living right now. Just because your country doesn't have anime in the mainstream, that doesn't mean Japan has anime in the mainstream. It is still very much a niche and underground subculture compared to a lot of things that are shown on TV. In fact, it's so niche and underground that most of the Japanese anime community actually likes to stay secluded. Like a lone wolf, they just want to indulge and experience the anime goodness on their own, which again leads me to my final point. Attitude towards foreigners. I've seen a lot of videos and I've read a lot of articles concerning how foreigners are treated in the Japanese culture. A lot of them are spouting shit like, oh, the Japanese people are racist to foreigners, so that's why I'm not gonna go. Nobody speaks English there and I can't communicate, so there's no point in going. Where are the subtitles? I can't read Japanese. What's the point of going to Japan then? Whoa! Jesus Christ! The fuck is that smell? Oh, right, it's straight up bullshit. First of all, yes, it is important to note that not a lot of Japanese people are 100% okay with foreigners at this point. But you have to remember that Japan is an island country that was secluded from the rest of the world for centuries. You reckon they're gonna change overnight? Not to mention, when you think about it, the rest of the world really can't be talking. How many times have you seen foreign tourists in your country and been like, these fucking tourists taking up space on the road. Hey, I'm walking here! I know a lot of people don't like to admit that, but we've all felt this at some point in our lives. We're all humans after all, it's fine. But let me just clear up some things on behalf of the Japanese people to say that only a select amount of people are xenophobic and racist to foreigners. Specifically the older generation, who I would say hasn't quite caught up to the multiculturalist movement that Japan is undergoing, as well as the rest of the world. And some people who live away from the big major cities where tourists are less likely to appear. If you go to major cities where there are heaps of tourists like Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, etc., I can tell you firsthand that 99% of people there are totally cool with you being a foreigner. And that goes for a lot of foreign anime fans and places that do cater to anime fans. With most maid cafes now incorporating English speaking maids, and a lot of anime stores, especially in Akihabara, our anime city, who do have English speaking staff and signs within the store that are written in English. And this whole thing about Japan doesn't have subtitles and nobody can speak English is also pretty bullshit in my opinion. If Japan was so against foreigners, then why would they incorporate English subtitles on every street sign, store notice, and train station? Why would the Japanese government initiate a plan to incorporate mandatory English classes to all elementary schools countrywide? And why would the Japanese anime industry be okay with foreign English-speaking countries adding and distributing subtitled anime series to the rest of the world? Now let me just clear up one thing and say, while there is a lot of English in Japan, not everybody can speak at a fluent or even a substantial level at all. But many foreign tourists have found that by coming to Japan, they can get the general message across to the Japanese people by using key terms and a lot of hand gestures. I mean, at some points it's mostly like sign language, but it still gets the message across. And many Japanese people do their absolute best to try and communicate with you, so don't worry about getting swerved too many times. Now, while the majority of IRL Japan is okay with foreigners, the Japanese anime community is unfortunately a bit of a different story. As mentioned in my earlier points, many members of the Japanese anime community are lone wolves. They want to keep their obsessions and hobbies as a secret and all to themselves. And thus there is very little camaraderie within the Japanese anime community as opposed to the international anime community. I mean, that is of course if you define camaraderie as going onto an anime forum for hours on end discussing who was best girl in Re:Zero. We all know it was Beatrice, alright, let's get over it. While they do have their equivalents of My Anime List and Reddit, these kinds of anime discussion forums, they usually stay on sites like 2chan, which I like to define as the cancer core of the internet. You thought 4chan was bad? You ain't seen nothing yet. And many members of the Japanese anime community are unfortunately a little bit close-minded to foreigners, simply because they never paid any interest to foreign countries or they've never left their room for 6 months. I mean, why would they hold interest to a foreign country when all of their needs and obsessions are in Japan? All the anime stuff is in Japan, it's nowhere else. why would they care? Now I could go on with this IRL Japan versus anime comparison forever. I could go out of my way to compare Japanese high schools versus anime high schools and how the portrayal of high schools in anime are seriously outdated compared to real life Japanese high schools. Or I could go on to compare consumption rates of anime between Japanese audiences and English speaking audiences and show you that the international community watches way more anime than the Japanese do. But I think at this point you get the idea. Anime is based off ideas that exist in real life Japan, but Japan is not like anime. Weeaboos thinking that Japan is going to remotely be like anime only come to Japan and just get disappointed with their weird expectations of the country. That's why I always said that coming to Japan doesn't revoke your weeaboo card. It doesn't un-weeaboo you. If anything, you come into Japan with just that anime only mindset and thinking that Japan is all about the anime is just going to make you more of a weeaboo. And that's why I made this video, to hopefully tell you guys that Japan is so much more than anime. And I want to share the beauty of the country that I live in by introducing things about anime, but also all the other beautiful things about this country. I have a vlog series on my second channel called My Japan Lifeu, which goes to show you all the other cool things that you can experience in Tokyo and in the rest of Japan. So if you've never seen those vlogs and you're interested, then click the link in the description, or there should be a pop-up on the screen right now. Stop right there. What? The fuck? My gun. Salsa. While you were busy doing your dumbass little rant that nobody will give a shit about, I took your precious waifu. You weeaboo fuck! Well, I hate to end the party so soon, but looks like it's sayonara for you, motherfucker. Shine! What? What the? What the? Got him! Bakana! Arianai! Unfortunately, you were being too weeaboo to realize one thing. Nandato. My waifu only loves me. Fuck that guy. So guys, let me know in the comments below, have you ever been to Japan? And if you did, then how did you find it? How did you find the experience? Was it everything that you hoped for? Were you a little disappointed when you got here? Or did you happen to find so much more? And if you've never been to Japan, and having listened to the entirety of this video, hopefully, would you still want to visit Japan regardless? Or maybe you just rather pass? Always guys, let me know all that kind of stuff in the comments below. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. As always, like and favorite if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more